In this lesson, I'm going to show you the split toning option. So I've reset this photo if you want to follow along. And basically what split toning is it's allowing you to play with the saturation and hue of the highlights in one way and then the shadows in another way. Remember when we did the hue, saturation, and luminance adjustments, how you can adjust those different aspects by color? This is a similar way of doing it by exposure, but just splitting the highlights and the shadows. So let me just quickly show you what you can do. If you drag the hue slider, nothing's going to happen until you drag the saturation up. So now if I drag the saturation up, let's just put it at 50, and then I drag the hue around, what's happening is it's adding this color tint to all the highlights. So for this portrait, it's pretty wacky, but you can get some really creative looks. You know, something a little bit more natural would be maybe adding some yellows, that kind of sepia tone to there. And then if you want, you can adjust the shadows. So again, if we just adjust the hue, nothing's going to happen. But if we first adjust the saturation, then you can see what's actually happening. So if we want sort of a yellow and a blue sort of look, we could do something like that. And that gets you that more sort of creative look, creating your own sort of unique filters with this. Now, when would this actually be practical? Well, in terms of landscapes, when you're not shooting people, I find that this can look a little bit more natural. So let's go to this photo of the night sky. And this includes the edits that I made before for the basic adjustments when we were learning about exposure. But say we want to play with the night sky and the highlights down below. The night sky is more of the shadows. The highlights are more of the street is more of the highlights. So we could go by slider, or you also have these two boxes here that are quick sort of ways to add a specific color or be very particular about the color. So they have some commonly used colors up here that you can just click. And you can see that when I do that, all the highlights get that sort of tint. So here we have a yellow tint, which looks pretty nice for the ground down below. And then it puts this box in this little highlights color bar. At the bottom are the unsaturated or desaturated colors. At the top, it's more saturated. So taking this box and dragging it up or down will make it more or less saturated. That's basically what we were doing back here on this saturation slider. It's just another way of doing it and being more precise. So you can see as I drag this through all of these, you can get some fairly cool looks. For something a little bit more natural, I'll put this around the yellow, around saturation 60. Now for the shadows, if I click that box again, if I want to make the sky a little bit bluer, let's start with this blue and see how that is. And then maybe pick it from there, and you don't want to go too crazy with it unless you like that style, but something like that looks pretty darn cool, I think. You also have this balance slider, which kind of goes from more making the strength of the highlights stronger to the shadows. Actually, this is more of the highlights, this is more of the shadows. So initially it's right in the middle, but if you want to like adjust the balance from one to the other, you can do that. So let's show you the before and after. Now this does apply the exposure adjustments as well, but you can hopefully see the split toning adjustments as well. This one looks fairly natural. The saturation might be a little much for both the highlights and the shadows, but something like that looks pretty cool. Now we can go super creative and basically do the opposite, making the sky some sort of, let's see, yeah, maybe some sort of pink, and then the highlights, some sort of blue or something like that, and you can get super creative that way. But I like the more sort of natural, simplistic approach of making something look somewhat natural, but still looking pretty cool. So use this, play around with it. It's definitely a more stylistic approach, but it's a really cool tool, and doing some subtle adjustments is probably the best thing to start out with, especially if you're taking portraits of people. It will be more apparent and work better if you have a high contrast image. If all the parts of your image are sort of in that mid-range exposure, this isn't, both the highlights and shadows will affect the whole image. in terms of the split toning adjustments. So you want to make sure that the image you're working with is more contrasty so you can really pinpoint adjusting just the shadows and the highlights. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next lesson.